Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to just warn the parents in the room that I'll be discussing some of the violent acts that take place in this parsha, as well as some of the violence that's taken place in the world recently. I won't be graphic, but if you don't want your children to hear that, then you should invite them to find something else to do for the next 10 minutes or so. This week on Facebook, a friend of mine who is Muslim shared a post of a friend of hers. So he was at a Starbucks in Louisville, and it had been a rough week on him, the week after the attacks in Paris. And he was standing in line to order his coffee, and he felt a tap on his shoulder. And he turned around, and there was a man standing in front of him in jeans and cowboy boots and a big cross. And he braced himself for what was going to come out of this man's mouth. And the man said, "We're all brothers, and I don't judge you because of what a group of people did thousands of miles from here. Can I buy you a cup of coffee today?" And he thanked him, and he allowed him to buy the cup of coffee. But this is not the kind of story that's appearing much in the media these days. And it's not the kind of story that appears in this week's parsha. One of the stories in the parsha is the rape of Dinah. So we're told that Dinah goes out into the fields near the city of Shechem, where her family is temporarily dwelling. And the prince of the city, also named Shechem, seizes her and he rapes her. Later, he goes to her father and he says, "I've fallen in love with your daughter, and I would like to marry her. And I'll give a good bride price. I'll pay money." And the brothers of Dinah are outraged at what happened to her, but they see an opportunity here. And they say, "Well, you can have Dinah if every male in your city agrees to be circumcised, and then our tribes can intermarry." So Shechem and his father Hamor agree, and they go back to the city, and they tell the people in the city, "This is good news. It's a very wealthy family. We want to intermarry with them, so we're all going to be circumcised." And they do it. And 3 days after the circumcision, 2 of Dinah's brothers, Shimon and Levi, go into the city where these men are convalescing, and they slaughter every last one of them while they're too weak to fight back. And then the other brothers come and help them pillage the entire city. This story is awful in so many ways. But the part I wish to focus on today is what Shimon and Levi did, which is to take out violence on an entire group of people based on the actions of one individual. Hamor should have been punished. Shechem should have been punished for what he did to Dinah. She deserves justice, but that was not the right way to go about it. Now, it turns out that if you look at Near Eastern law codes, this was actually a practice for merging tribes during that time. That one way to open negotiations for intermarriage between the tribes was to seize a woman from the other tribe, and it appears in multiple cultures' law codes. By mentioning it, I'm not condoning it, but I am saying that Shimon and Levi were seeing something play out that was a normative part of the culture at the time, and then the text tells us that they decided to act with guile. Another thing that we know from the ancient law codes of the time is that there were legal recourses to be taken when a woman was raped. They had another option other than violence. But I think what disturbs me the most about Levi and Shimon's actions is that it was so cowardly. They didn't go to war with soldiers. They waited until their foes were vulnerable, and then they struck them down. There's another story in the Torah about violence and the opportunity to punish the collective for the actions of some. It's the story of Noah. God could have not seen Noah's righteousness. God could have said, "Those human beings are all alike," just as Shimon and Levi said, Those men in the city of Shechem are all violent brutes, and we must stop them before they do more harm to our people. But that's not what God did. God showed discernment. God evaluated Noah and his family on their own merit, and God spared them. That must have taken a great deal of courage and faith on God's part, because the fear of the violence of humanity at that time was a very real fear. We have been taught in this tradition that Jewish people value courage. And one of the words for courage is chayil. In the story of our ancestor Ruth, she is referred to as an eshet chayil, and her husband Boaz is referred to as a gibor chayil. And the two of them are the ancestors of the Messiah. So we know this is an important value. But the courage they display is not just one of strength or might, it's one of kindness. Ruth displays that she is an eshet chayil by accompanying her elderly mother-in-law back home to a foreign country. And when there is no work or food available that her mother-in-law can do, Ruth takes it upon herself to work in the fields to support the family. And Boaz protects this alien girl first in his fields and then by marrying her. They display that quality of chayal, of valor, through acts of kindness. And by the way, we can get hints in the texts that Ruth was not so popular in this town that she arrived in. But Boaz took care of her and her family anyway. I don't want this to be a lecture on politics. It's not the appropriate place. This is a shul for people from the left and the right. But I do want to point out the Jewish ethics in the world in this situation, because our God demands that we be people of valor. And our Torah insists that our desire to do good not be overwhelmed by our sense of fear. This week in Irving, Muslims tried to enter their mosque and had to walk by armed protesters with Islamophobic slogans. This week in Pflugerville, a Quran smeared in feces was delivered to a mosque there. Yesterday afternoon, I was on the phone with the head of CARE. It's the public relations for the Muslim people in the North Texas area. It was a number of pastors and imams and one rabbi talking about what should we do about the situation. And a young woman shared her story that while she was walking down the street, someone reached for her headscarf to pull it off and spat at her here in the DFW area. And I think for me, the most alarming thing is we have a presidential candidate who this week said that we should label people and register them and track them. And I think the Jewish people know full well the danger when we have people in the streets having their religious garb removed, and when we have potential government officials encouraging us to register someone by ethnicity or a religious belief. So what can we do? Well, if you overhear someone making a comment out of a place of fear, rather than their capacity to achieve justice or compassion in the world, talk to them about it. Don't let it pass. You can join the interfaith efforts that are going on in the DFW area to say it's not right to judge a people by the actions of some. You can buy someone a cup of coffee. And you can make our God proud by displaying that you are a person of valor. Shabbat Shalom.